Hello. What's up, guys? Happy Thursday. Hope everyone's having a beautiful, beautiful day out there. We are currently sitting here in the corner of my bedroom, recording a podcast, episode 141 of the show with me, the host name. It's been a rough. You know what? Nah. We're not going to start off with the energy. It's been a good week, man. I'm super excited to get away. I'm leaving for these next 2 weekends in a row. This upcoming weekend and then the weekend after that. And I'm super excited for that, just to get away. But I want to just get into this podcast as quick as possible. Like I said in the last episode, I'm going to be talking a little bit about this book that I'm reading. This is like a book club. I'm starting to figure out my podcast is just a book club. I just read books, and then I explain to you guys what I'm reading. And if I enjoy them, I recommend them. And if I don't enjoy them, I still recommend them because you might enjoy them. I don't have COVID. I know that's like an important thing to say. Don't have COVID. Don't have it. They're tracking us on our phones now, so that's fun. Pfizer, 95%. Who else? Moderna, 95%. Success rate. It looks like Pfizer's starting to pump theirs out. Like there's actually people, like it's actually going to the FDA. So it might be regulated and it might be allowed to be able to be used. But then it still has to, like, they have to make like billions of vaccines, or at least a couple 100 million, because, I mean, let's be fair, who cares about the rest of the country, right? I mean, honestly, like China, Europe, they're just more angry. Americans, right? I'm just kidding. I have plenty of fans in Europe. I have a lot of people that, I can look up, I'm going to look up all the places that listen to my podcast. And this is super cool. I'm going to give shout outs because it's so the majority of my listeners come from the United States. Boom. My cousin's starting a clothing company, and I'm super excited to rock his gear. I'm going to buy all his stuff. You got to support local businesses, especially at a time like this, dude. Time like this, you need to support the smaller businesses out there. But so like I get the most love from my podcast: Virginia, Maryland, DC, North Carolina, Texas, California, Nevada, specifically Hagerstown, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, New York, Atlanta, Los Angeles, Minneapolis, Atlanta. I get a lot of love in Canada too, mainly Ontario, Alberta, British Columbia, and Quebec. Never been there. I would love to go there. But this is what's super cool about the podcast. This is what's super interesting. I would love to, if you're listening to my podcast right now and you're in one of these following countries that I'm going to mention, I want you to send me like an email, michaellabsr@gmail.com, or hit me up on Instagram on DM. And I want to get your guys' opinion on everything that I'm talking about, because I feel like it's very American centralized complaints that I'm having. To be fair, a lot of it is complaining, but I think that's who I am. I am a complainer. I'm just kidding. But I'm gonna go ahead and read off these countries because it's so amazing to me that I have half the world that listens to my podcast, like literally in every continent. So we have Spain. Within Spain, we have, I can't see it, but we have Spain that listens to the podcast, France, Belgium, which is super neat, Brussels, that's where it's listened to. Never been there, super cool. United Kingdom, everything. Scotland's listening to it, Northern Ireland, Yorkshire, and Humber, 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 not Humper, East Midlands, West Midlands, Southwest, Southeast, East of England, in Greater London, Ireland is listening to it, Norway, which is super cool. Shout out to Norway. This is what's really neat. Africa, a lot of like countries in Africa: Egypt, Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, specifically the Greater Accra of Ghana. I I don't even know what that is. Greater, I mean, I know what it is. It's a place in Ghana. The Great Accra region has the smallest area of Ghana, 16 administration regions, occupying a total land surface of 3,200. This is 1.4% of the total land area. It's just crazy that people out in Ghana, 4.2 million people, yeah. So that's probably where the capital is listening to my podcast. So shout out to Africa. India, Nepal, Thailand, South Korea, Philippines, Indonesia, and finally, Australia, Western Australia, New South Wales, and Victoria is also listening to the podcast. So that's super cool. So thank you guys so much for international love on the podcast. Yeah, I wasn't expecting this when I started, but we're here, and you guys are awesome, and I can't do without all the continued support each week. Can't believe we got 140 episodes. I'm telling you, dude, this lockdown, you're going to see a lot of people come out of this lockdown better than they were pre-lockdown. I think a lot of people are finding new things that they enjoy in life. They're starting new businesses. There's a lot of positivity coming out of this, and it's not all negative things. Like, there's a lot of positive shit coming out of the coronavirus pandemic. But at the same time, summer 2021 is going to be nuts. If we can get a vaccine out, people take the vaccine. Yeah. So I'm super excited for the future. We'll see. I'm going to start reaching out to, I think, a bunch of authors here soon to try to get, I didn't want to do it, but I think I might end up doing it, to get Zoom interviews with some authors. I might go ahead and do that. We'll see. There's a lot of things I want to do that I don't end up doing, but there's a lot of things that I do want to do. One of the first things I want to do is I want to read a few of these passages from this book that I've been reading, The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker. It's funny, people ask me like at work, oh yeah, this is really frustrating on the podcast here. This needs to be turned like this so you guys can see the type of candle it is. Link in the bio. I'm just kidding. There's no link in the bio. We're not at this stage yet. But there is what was I talking about? Oh yeah. So I'm trying to read like 2 books a month. So about 24 books a year. I'm on pace to, I think, about 30 books this year. Probably won't hit it because the next book I'm going to read is going to be about drugs. But then after that, it's going to be this Being in Nothingness by Jean-Paul Sartre, which is all about existentialism. And this is a very long book. It's like a 800-page book, 900-page book. And then after that, I'm going to read The Gulag Archipelago, which is a book that I've been wanting to read for the longest time, and I've never actually read it. It is by a gentleman named Alexander Solzhenitsyn. It's a 3-volume nonfiction text written between 1958 and 1968 by Russian writer and dissident Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Structurally, the text comprises 3 sections: publication, impact. So it basically explains his time coming back from the war of World War II, or I believe, and then being locked up in prison. So, and maybe I'm wrong with that, but it's a book that I really want to read, and it's a complicated book. Like, it's going to take me probably 2, 3, 4 months to read it, just to digest it the way I think it deserves to be digested, and to really allow myself to understand what it's about. So I'm kind of like on a philosophy kick right now. After that, I'm probably going to go away from philosophy for a while, maybe like diet, nutrition. I don't want to burden myself too much with one subject. As you can see, I did sell a few of my books. I sold Something Deeply Hidden Inside, that physics book. And then I also sold another book, a DNA book, and I forget what it was called. Both brilliant books, but I don't like to read one subject for too long. It just kind of mushes my brain. So, like I said, I'm kind of on a philosophy kick right now, but I do want to get back into maybe a biology kick. Once school's out this semester, I'm going to be on break for a while. And then I'm actually, next semester, they've already called we're going to be online again. So I'm going to probably just keep on reading. Online school's fake school. So I say that like all the time. And I don't know if my teachers listen to my podcast, and I don't know if administration listens to my podcast. But I think if they were being objectively honest with themselves, they would also agree with that it's pretty much it's not nonsense. Like, it's not complete nonsense, but for the quality of education that you're getting, it's never going to equal the same thing as if you were in person. And it's nobody's fault. But what I'm basically trying to say here is that I have time to not constantly be, surrounded. Like, I have time to go away and read about like death or like existentialism or nihilism or whatever it is that's intriguing me at the moment. I can go and read it because I'm not being tasked. I'm not being stressed out with learning at school. So I'm going to continue to read. I'm going to continue to share my thoughts on the books I read. I think that's something that is super important for this podcast, is to express how I feel about certain books that I'm reading. But this book is an interesting book because it's so I read at work, and then I have a lot of members come up and they say, "What are you reading?" And usually I can explain really well what I'm reading, but this book I can't really explain. No, it's kind of like, what do I always say? I always say it tries to break down. Ernest Becker was an anthropologist, and he tries to break down death and how it relates to us as in humans, and how it motivates us to succeed in the world. How it is knowing that it is there, knowing that our life is finite. It allows us to go through life enjoying certain moments, and the way that we try to put it away from our conscious mind is we try to do things that separate death, that take us, death, and we try to split the atom, make the space between the two as far as possible. And one way we like to do it is by success, by finances, by women, by riches, by risk, and he tries to break down how death is the only thing that gives our life meaning. And that's something I do obsess over a lot. I think that's true. I would agree with that. I would agree death gives us meaning. If we didn't die, we wouldn't have an urge to do anything, right? If we knew that we would be alive forever, we wouldn't struggle every day to try to do well, right? We wouldn't, right? Because we would have unlimited time, and unlimited time also is not knowing about death, not recognizing death is the same thing as never dying, right? Like, if we didn't know that one day everything would end, I think that's the same thing as never dying, right? Because you wouldn't live your life like death is upon you. And it's super fascinating. He tries to break down Kierkegaard, who was a philosopher and a psychologist who also fondled around and struggled with the idea of death. He really breaks down Sigmund Freud and Sigmund Freud's complicated personality and how it affected the way he dealt with things and how he explained death, and how for him death wasn't so much about him leaving and ending and falling off the world, but it was more or less about the grief that people, especially his mom, would have to go through if he passed away. But it's super fascinating. But the few passages I'm going to read are about depression and anxiety. And I think he does a brilliant job breaking it down. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I don't want to lose my spot. I don't know. Maybe you guys won't like this, but I think this is important to do. And I think it's unique. So I want to just kind of try to explain just read this one paragraph, and I think it's fascinating. So this is not me. This is from the book The Denial of Death, written by Ernest Becker back in 1974. This is also a winner of the Pulitzer Prize. There's going to be a few chapters, or a few paragraphs. This first one's only going to be one paragraph, kind of long. I'm not the best reader, and I also never read out loud, so this should be fascinating. But I'm going to go ahead and give it my best. So, the defenses okay, I digress. Let's start again. The defenses that form a person's character support a grand illusion, and when we grasp this, we can understand the full drivenness of man. He is driven away from himself, from self-knowledge, self-reflection. He is driven toward things that support the lie of his character, his automatic equanimity. But he's also drawn precisely toward those things that make him anxious, as a way of skirting them masterfully, testing himself against them, controlling them by defying them. As Kierkegaard taught us, anxiety lures us on, becomes a spur too much of our energetic activity. We flirt with our own growth, but also dishonestly. This explains much of the friction in our lives. We enter symbiotic relationships in order to get the security we need, in order to get relief from our anxieties, our loneliness, and our helplessness. But these relationships also bind us. They enslave us even further because they support the lie we have fashioned. So we strain against them in order to be more free. The irony is that we do this straining uncritically, in a struggle within our own armor, as it were, and so we increase our drivenness, the second-hand quality of our struggle for freedom. Even in our flirtations with anxiety, we are unconscious of our motives. We seek stress. We push our limits. But we do it with our screen against despair, and not with despair itself. We do it with the stock market, with sports cars, with atomic missiles, with the success ladder in the corporation or the corporation in the university. We do it in the prison of a dialogue with our own little family, by marrying against their wishes or choosing a way of life because they frown on it, and so on. Hence, the complicated and secondhand quality of our entire drivenness. Even in our passions, we are nursery children playing with toys that represent the real world. Even when these toys crash and cost us our lives and our sanity, we are cheated of the consolation that we were in the real world instead of the playpen of our fantasies. We still do not meet our doom on our own manly terms, in contest with objective reality. It is fateful and ironic how the lie we need in order to live dooms us to a life that is never really ours. I find that to be such a brilliant, scary, freeing interpretation of the world. Kierkegaard taught us anxiety lures us on, becomes a spur to much of our energetic activities. It lures us on. Because of it, we continue to do what we do. Without anxiety, we would have an engine with no gas in it. We flirt with our own growth, but also dishonesty. This explains much of the friction in our lives. We sacrifice growth. No, we sacrifice lying to ourselves. We lie to ourselves to continue to grow. We place these things in our lives to give our life meaning. We gamble in our lives to escape the anxieties of death. It's so fascinating. He broke it down. The stock market is a gambling machine, right? And the risk is heavily decreased with time, but the risk is still there. The sports cars, the relationships. We all know people who are in relationships that they should not be in. The healthiness is not there. People go against what their parents recommend. You know, it's so fascinating the way he finishes. We still did not meet our doom on our own manly terms, in contest with objective reality. It is fateful and ironic how the lie we need in order to live dooms us to a life that is never really ours. It is fateful and ironic how the lie we need in order to live, because we have to create a lie. We have to push away death, knowing that the world's going to end. We have to, or we will go insane. like we will go insane. Like people do go insane when they know death is around the corner, right? And how do we, and dooms us to a life that is never really ours. That's just one of them. That's so beautiful to me. I don't know why. It speaks to me so much. Like we have this tenacity to just continue with our daily routine and just live it in such a free manner, knowing that it's all going to be stripped away from us. And I think the younger me found that to be so just ridiculous. But I think as I age, I think that's beautiful. I think that is such a beautiful thing. I think that's such a powerful thing, to be able to pick up yourself, to find my responsibility in things, even knowing that responsibility is pointless because death is the only option. We try to escape our anxieties every day, but the anxiety leads to us to escape. Our anxieties are like, so you can try to stuff away lies all you want, right? You can try to run from the truth all you want, but the anxiety is like the little tiny the shock that's constantly telling you, hey bro, hey man, pay attention to me. You're lying to me. You're breaking the rules. You're not doing the best you can do. You can do more. You can run that extra mile. You can call that extra account to try to close that account for your business. You know, you can work that extra hour. You can study that extra day. You know what I mean? You can take that extra class even though you say you don't want to because you want to do this instead. It's such a brilliant, brilliant concept, and I think it's scary. It's really scary. Like, you know, the whole speaking about death is scary. Right. And the reason why it's scary is because you can't escape it. But it's so important to just sit back and really digest it. I'm gonna read another one. I recommend this book to everybody. I think this is a book that everyone should read. I don't know where this one goes. I'm going to go ahead and just read this section right here. Hopefully I get to the point. Other urges to freedom. Kierkegaard's threefold typology does not exhaust the character of man. He knows that all men are not so immediate or shallow, so automatically built into their culture, so securely embedded in things and in others, so trustingly a reflex of their world. Also, comparatively, few people end up on the psychotic extremes of the continuum of human defeat, some with a degree of self-realization without surrender to complete spiritualness or slavery. And here, Kierkegaard's analysis becomes the most telling. He is attempting to ferret people out of the lie of their lives, whose lives do not look like a lie. That's brilliant, man. Who seems to succeed in being true, complete, and authentic persons. There is a type of man who has great contempt for immediacy, who tries to cultivate his interiority, base his pride on something deeper and inner, create a distance between himself and the average man. I think this is why I saved this section, because it reminds me a little bit of the person that I was, so the person that I'm trying to shift from. Kierkegaard calls this type of man the introvert. He's a little more concerned with what it means to be a person with individuality and uniqueness. I relate to this so much. This is why I saved it. Okay. He enjoys solitude and withdraws periodically to reflect, perhaps to nurse ideas about his secret self, what it might be. This, after all is said and done, is the only real problem of life, the only worthwhile preoccupation of man. What is one's true talent, his secret gift, his authentic vocation? In what way is one truly unique, and how can he express this uniqueness, give it form, dedicate it to something beyond himself? How can the person take his private inner being, the great mystery that he feels at the heart of himself, his emotions, his yearnings, and use them to live more distinctively, to enrich both himself and mankind with the peculiar quality of his talent? It's so beautiful, because I feel like I'm constantly just questioning everything. It's such a deep, deep level. This is why I saved it. It's beautiful. In adolescence, most of us throb with this dilemma, expressing it either with words and thoughts or with simple numb pain and longing. The first thing I think of when I read that is goth kids in school, like the kids that, wear an excessive amount of eye black, that have cuts all over the wrist, that are very quiet. Because, as a young child, you don't think that they're actually just, probably smarter, or that they're trying to just figure out the world, because for some reason they just feel disconnected from it, and they're actually in deep, deep thought. But usually life sucks us up into standardized activities. This is when the rat race kicks in, where all these thoughts are going, and you constantly try to figure things out, but they're so complicated that you get caught. You get, like, if you're a fish, you get caught by the hook. The bait is too attractive, and you get caught. And this is what he explains here. So this is a fish swimming along, trying to go upstream when everyone else is going downstream, because he or she is trying to figure out the question of his life, and then boom, the bait's there. He bites it, she bites it. The social hero system into which we are born marks out paths of our heroism, paths to which we conform, to which we shape ourselves so that we can please others, become what they expect us to be. And instead of working our inner secret, we gradually cover it over and forget it, while we become purely external men, playing successfully the standardized hero game into which we happen to fall by accident, by family connection, by reflex patriotism, or by the simple need to eat and the urge to procreate. That is so great. That we give up on trying to question things. We give up on trying to learn the meaning of life. We give up on trying to process complicated thought patterns and try to figure out who we are and figure out what this is about, figure out the relationships with people, and try to just figure out the meaning of life. And instead of working our inner secret, we gradually cover it over. We forget about it. We use these shiny little pieces of, of dopamine rushes. We fall into these already these things that have already been accomplished by people. We fall in love with them. We forget about ourselves. We lose ourselves. We forget about what it means for us to have a thought, for us to be struggling with a complicated idea. While we become purely external man, we no longer are within ourselves. We're now part of the rest of the world. Successfully, the standardized hero game into which we happen to fall by accident, by family connection, by people around us, we give into it, by reflex patriotism. That is such a beautiful way of saying military or something that is beyond us, or by the simple need to eat and the urge to procreate. I think that's so brilliant. It's like, yeah, it's brilliant. I'm not saying, this is Ernest Becker, I'm not saying that Kierkegaard's introvert keeps this inner quest fully alive or conscious, only that it represents somewhat more of a dimly aware problem that it does with the swallowed up immediate man. Kierkegaard's introvert feels that he is something different from the world, has something in himself that the world cannot reflect, cannot, in its immediacy and shallowness, appreciate. And so he holds himself somewhat apart from the world. God, there's something about that. It seems so selfish, right? It's almost like you're better than, but it's not that. It's not better than. It's more like I have so many respawns in my life. I don't want to use them on things that don't fulfill the respawn. So I guess it is in weird ways selfishness. So you keep yourself away from the world. You hide. You hide from the world. But not too much, not completely. It would be so nice to be the self he wants to be, to realize his vocation, his authentic talent. But it is dangerous. It might upset the world completely. That's so true. He's, after all, basically weak, in a position of compromise. Not an immediate man, but not a real man either. Even though he gives the appearance of it, Kierkegaard describes him. He gives the appearance of being a real man, but he's not a real man either. Kierkegaard describes him. Outwardly, he's completely a real man. I feel like I'm talking about myself. I look like the most typical man you can find, right? I feel like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm not, but I feel like I look like that. I don't know. People say that. He's a university man, husband and father, an uncommonly competent civil functionary, even a respectable father, very gentle to his wife, and carefulness itself with respect to his children. And a Christian? Well, yes, he is that too, after a sort. However, he preferably avoids talking on the subject. Sounds like my father, like my personal father. He very seldom goes to church because it seems to him that most parsons really don't know what they are talking about. I think a lot of people don't want to admit that, but I think a lot of people flow through this world going like, what did that person just say? Like, that didn't make sense. Why did you say that? I know I do that. Judgmental, I think, yes, but also just confused. He makes an exception in the case of one particular priest of whom he concedes that he knows what he is talking about, but he doesn't want to hear him for another reason because he has a fear that this might lead him too far. There's one more passage I want to read. I'll probably read it in next week's episode, but that is just, yeah. I think all men have been there. I think women have been there too, where you just start questioning, everything around you. You start wondering what all this is about. And what is an introvert? People say they're an introvert all the time, but what does it mean? And is being an introvert actually what you want to be? I don't want to be an introvert. I say I'm an introvert, but I think I enjoy talking to people. But I don't think being an introvert means that you don't enjoy talking to people. Let's see what the internet says. Intro. A shy, reticent person. I don't even know what that means. See, I can't even start this because I don't know what that word means. Not revealing one's thoughts or feelings. Right? See, I don't think that's what an introvert is, because I think the act of being an introvert, you're revealing your feelings, right? Like if you're a quiet person, if you're a shy person, if you're somebody who doesn't outwardly express their opinions all the time, you are expressing who you are. I know who you are. You're probably a very thoughtful person. What is an introverted person like? Ask Google. An introvert is often thought of as a quiet, reserved, and thoughtful individual. They don't seek out special attention or social engagements, as these events can leave introverts feeling exhausted and drained. I would agree with that. Introverts are the opposite of extroverts. Thanks. Cool. Yeah, and I think for me, there's a point in my life where I was trying to play the role of an introvert because I thought that's what got me attention. I'm pretty sure, and that I think that's common too. I think that's people go through that. I don't know. I feel like this book has taken me to another level of thought, another place of thinking, another stage of growth in my life. And I like I said, I highly, highly recommend it. It's by Ernest Becker. He was he talks a lot about Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, and I didn't know how much of a a relationship those two had. I had no idea that Carl Jung even knew, because I love Carl Jung. I didn't know that they even had a relationship. But he talks a lot about Sigmund Freud, like passing out, about the thought of death, about even talking about death. And I guess, yeah, look, they're right here. They're right next to each other. That's so wild, man. I think Carl Jung was just a philosopher, right? Maybe not. Maybe he was a doctor or a psychiatric too. Psychiatrist. Yeah, he was a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who founded analytical psychology. Jung's work was influential in the fields of psychiatry, anthropology, archaeology, literature, philosophy, and religious studies. Jung worked as a research scientist at the famous Bulgazia Hospital under Eugene Bleuler, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Yeah, I don't know. God, it's a brilliant book. Brilliant book. There's a guy named Lex Friedman who has these just astonishing guests on his podcast, and he is somebody who I recommend everyone going and watching his YouTube channel. He had Yaron Brook, who's a philosopher who his big basis is off of objectivism. But I recommend his podcast. But I'm not going to keep you guys much longer. I just wanted to read a few of these passages and give you guys a few of my opinions on them, and just I want people to really just try to better themselves and try to listen to more things and try to embrace knowledge and embrace ideas that they don't know. I think that's a beautiful thing. The world is so complicated. It's so unique. It's always changing, especially the world that we live in. I feel like, especially now more than ever, we need a world where we can grab onto something, where there's change every day, every second. There's something else around us. It's just falling apart. I think we need something to just grab on, and grabbing onto something is going to give us a sense of hope. It's going to allow us to recognize that we have something that we can control. Irony there, me talking about control in the passage I read by Ernest Becker. But yes, this hat's ridiculous. I'm in Baltimore up here. My hair is just ridiculous. I'm going to change my haircut. No more of the hard part. It looks terrible right now. Look at that. I look fucking homeless. I do. I look homeless. Dude, I got the coolest mic setup, bro. Yeah, so I'm gonna try to reach out to some authors, see if I can get Zoom on. I don't feel smart enough to talk to them, and I'm probably not smart enough, but I still think it would be super cool to get some super smart people on this podcast. But with that being said, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys go. Make sure you leave this podcast a like, rating on Apple. I would love to get to 1,000 ratings on Apple Podcasts. If we can do it by, I guess it doesn't matter, but by like New Year's, that won't happen. Maybe by like the beginning of June. That would be super awesome. I think we're at like 630, which is, by the way, that's astonishing to me that I have that many people who are out there rating my podcast. And YouTube is doing well, and you guys seem to really enjoy the podcast. And I'm not stopping anytime soon. I'm on it, and I love it, and it's so much fun, and it grows, and people listen to it, and it's international. And I love, like, sometimes I just sit by myself. I'm like, I wonder what the person in Ghana is thinking about right now. Depending on their life in Africa, especially Ghana, they probably just listen to this and like, that white dude is just bitching and complaining non-stop. Like, all he does is complain. And like that, I like romanticize about that. I think that's super funny. Or like people in Europe, or like people in like Australia, like Scotland, are probably like, that fucking American gringo. He doesn't shut up. He's always complaining about everything. He's such a crybaby. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that's what we do here in America. But also podcasts, gotta complain, man. Gotta have the content. Gotta have something, bro. I think this time I see you guys next week, it will be Thanksgiving break. That's crazy, dude. It's already Thanksgiving. It's been such a wild year. But yeah, I'll catch you guys next week. Enjoy it with your family. I will be posting a podcast on Thanksgiving, so look forward to that. Maybe watch football. Enjoy it with your family. Be careful if you go out. I recommend getting a test before you guys travel. I'm getting a test before I travel. But yeah, guys, be good to yourself. Be good to your family. Thank you so much for listening. I'll catch you guys episode 142, where I'm going to probably read another passage from this Denial of Death book. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'll catch you next week. See ya.